Shut up! Just shut your mouth!
Zhang Cheng's pointed questions had clearly struck a nerve, dredging up memories that Brother Lei had spent a lifetime trying to bury. The man thrashed violently against his restraints, his eyes burning with a primal murderous intensity as if he could tear his interrogator apart with thought alone. But Zhang Cheng remained completely unmoved. The scraps of information in the recovered notes had only provided a glimpse into Brother Lei's escape from the city of Oracle. If they wanted to grasp the true nature of this world, they would have to squeeze the remaining secrets from the man himself. Lin Yi took a measured step toward the man on the floor, his expression unreadable but his intent clear.
Tell us the truth. What exactly happened to make the world like this?
Yeah, start talking. Why did our lives turn into this endless nightmare?
Idiots. You're all just arrogant idiots. You were raised by the very freaks you fear, and you don't even realize it.
Zhang Cheng let out a dry, mocking chuckle, his gaze sweeping over the defeated figure on the ground.
Aren't you in the same boat? You're just as much a part of this world as we are?
Not quite. We might be here, but at least we weren't kept as common breeding stock.
Brother Lei's face flushed a deep, bruised red. Veins throbbed rhythmically at his temples as his rage surged toward a breaking point. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was a low, jagged rasp that seemed to cut through the heavy air of the hall.
This world didn't change. It didn't become a nightmare. It has been this way from the very start.
That's complete bullshit. Everything has a beginning. There has to be a reason for the way things are. And those monsters, where did they come from? You'd better start explaining, or I'll make you regret every breath.
Lu Linhai snatched the rusted rebar from Lin Yi's hand, his grip tightening until his knuckles turned white as he loomed over the man. Lin Yi's voice cut through the heavy silence, quiet and laden with a growing, uncomfortable realization.
I think he might actually be telling us the truth.
Lu Linhai spun toward him, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and sheer disbelief.
Are you out of your mind, Lin Yi? You're actually buying into this man's insanity?
I am.
In stark contrast to the other's agitation, Zhang Cheng remained unsettlingly composed, as if he had already reached this conclusion long ago. While the revelation had seemingly paralyzed the rest, Zhang Cheng appeared almost intrigued by the horrific implications.
Why wouldn't I believe him? It's the only explanation that fits the data.
Zhang Cheng approached Lu Linhai, his hand reaching out for a reassuring gesture, but the larger boy flinched away as if from a physical blow. A flicker of a frown crossed Zhang Cheng's face before he turned his attention back to the group at large.
I'm with Lin Yi on this. Brother Lei is likely telling us the absolute truth. There is one fundamental truth here that none of us can possibly deny. We were all nurtured and raised by the very monsters we've been fighting for our lives.
So, what does that even prove?
It means the very foundation of our existence, our knowledge, our experiences, our entire understanding of the world is built on a lie.
Zhang Cheng gave a single sharp nod, his eyes gleaming with a cold intellectual fire as he picked up the thread.
Exactly. And that leads us to a much more terrifying question. Is any part of our reality genuine? How much of what we know is true and how much is just a carefully constructed fiction?
So what you're saying is, our belief that freaks shouldn't exist is just a result of the education we were given?
Lu Linhai scratched his head, his face a picture of confusion as he struggled to grasp the abstract concept being laid out.
I don't get it. What does that have to do with anything?
Zhang Cheng smirked, his eyes glinting with a patronizing amusement as he looked at the larger boy.
Our resident gorilla is a little slow on the uptake. Understandable. Let me break it down for you in simpler terms. Imagine someone who has never even heard of a spider. They have no idea such a creature exists in the world. Then, out of nowhere, they encounter one for the first time. How do you think they would react? What would they feel?
Lu Linhai frowned, clearly not a fan of the arachnid analogy.
A spider? I I'd be creeped out. Spiders are disgusting.
Lin Yi shook his head, his expression thoughtful as he considered the deeper point Zhang Cheng was making.
Not necessarily. Without any prior knowledge or prejudice, they might just be curious about this strange new creature.
Zhang Cheng gave a sharp nod, his smirk widening as he pushed the analogy further into darker territory.
Exactly. But now imagine that the spider they found is a lethal black widow. Suppose they bring it home to show their family, none of whom have ever seen a spider either, and then a family member is bitten and dies instantly. What would their perception of that creature be then?
Lu Linhai looked toward Lin Yi, his voice wavering with a dawning, horrific realization.
They'd be terrified, wouldn't they? They'd think it's some kind of evil.
Lin Yi's brow furrowed, his voice dropping to a somber tone as he completed the thought, the weight of the truth settling on him.
They would see that unknown creature as a monster, a demon from their worst nightmares.
The analogy hung in the air, a perfect, chilling representation of the divide between their perceived reality and the horrific truth of the world they lived in.
We were conditioned to believe that freaks shouldn't exist simply because the knowledge we were given conveniently left them out. But look at them. They have clear, distinct biological traits. The mantis wolves in the city, the hair snail parasites here. They aren't anomalies. They're a part of the system. The documents Uncle Ann recovered prove it. These creatures are categorized, studied, and managed. They are a part of this world's biological reality. It means our entire understanding of the world is intentionally incomplete. We've been looking at a cropped picture our whole lives.
And the most horrific part is, every single fact we know was hand-fed to us by the very freaks who are farming us like livestock.
Lu Linhai paused, his brow furrowed in uncharacteristic concentration as he processed the weight of their words.
Okay, but if the freaks are just the farmers, where did they get their knowledge from? Who taught them?
Zhang Cheng gave a single approving nod, a rare flicker of genuine respect crossing his features.
Look at that. The gorilla is actually starting to think. Maybe there's hope for your evolution after all.
Lu Linhai's face flushed with a quick flash of anger, and he brandished the rusted rebar with a menacing glare.
You want to see how fast I can evolve you into a corpse?
Zhang Cheng ignored the threat entirely, his gaze drifting back down to the defeated man on the stone floor.
The knowledge the freaks possess was almost certainly taught to them by those true humans Brother Lei mentioned. The life we believe to be normal, it's a carefully crafted illusion. A stage play designed by the masters to keep their livestock docile. And for the first time in our lives, we're finally starting to see behind the curtain. We're touching the real truth of this world.
Zhang Cheng took another deliberate step toward the man on the floor, his eyes searching for the final piece of the puzzle.
There is one thing that still eludes me, however. What is the ultimate objective of these true humans? Why would they go to such incredible lengths to corral these freaks and force them to live in a human-like society?
Zhang Cheng paused for a heartbeat, a flicker of doubt crossing his face as he reconsidered his own terminology.
Or perhaps, this is simply the natural way freaks live, and we're the ones who have been forced to imitate them. But that's irrelevant for now. Let's assume the human lifestyle is the intended model. The masters wouldn't construct such a complex, deceptive world without a clear purpose. So, why do it? What's the end goal?
I don't know.
Lu Linhai prodded the man with the tip of the rusted rebar, his voice a low, dangerous snarl dripping with threat.
You'd better start talking or I'll end your pathetic life right here and now.
Brother Lei's gaze swept over the group, and then, without warning, he erupted into a fit of jagged, hysterical laughter.
What's so funny? Answer me, you bastard!
I'm laughing at your sheer, monumental stupidity. You really have no idea, do you? What in the hell makes you think I'd ever tell you anything? Why should I help the ones who took everything from me? You burned the village I spent years building. You slaughtered the freaks I finally managed to find. You've destroyed my revenge, my purpose, my entire life. I want to see you all rot. I want you to die. Die! Die!
In a final explosive surge of primal rage, Brother Lei lunged forward, his head snapping toward Zhang Cheng's leg with animalistic ferocity. Brother Lei's gaze burned with a raw, unfiltered venom. He loathed the freaks, the monsters, this whole wretched, dying world. But that hatred reached a fever pitch whenever it settled on Chengdao. In his warped perception, and Chengdao was one of the God-chosen, the elites who stood above the muck. It was a sickening, stagnant malice. Powerless to change his fate, he funneled every ounce of his festering rage toward those who held the power he lacked. Back in the hellish pits he called home, the God-chosen were the only ones who could escape their lot as mere livestock. They were the masters of their own destiny. Seeing others grasp what was forever beyond his reach, it began as simple envy, but it had long since fermented into something far more toxic. Yet, he wasn't a fool. He knew he was outmatched. Killing Chengdao was a pipe dream. If he couldn't strike the leader, he would tear into the ones standing nearby. Without warning, he lunged, his jaws snapping toward Zhang Cheng's leg. He aimed to rip the meat right from the bone, even through the thick fabric of the man's trousers. Outside, the village roared with fire, a wall of flame that held the scavenging rats and mutated birds at a distance. But it was a fragile barrier. Once the fire flickered out, the copper scent of blood would act like a beacon. The vermin and winged horrors would swarm the village for a feast. His desperate animalistic gamble didn't pay off. And Chengdao moved with the lethal, fluid grace of a predator, reacting before the lunge was even complete. He wrenched Zhang Cheng back with a forceful yank. Brother Lei's teeth collided with a sickening snap, catching only a scrap of cloth mere millimeters from the skin.
You've still got the gall to try and bite us?
Furious, Lin Yi stepped forward, his knuckles white around the steel bar. He swung the heavy rod down with a brutal, crushing force toward the man on the ground. Lin Yi's barrage of insults didn't cease until Zhang Cheng raised a calm, steadying hand, signaling for silence. Surprisingly, Zhang Cheng showed no trace of irritation at the man's earlier attempt to maim him.
What's the matter? Feeling like a dead man walking, so you figured you'd drag me down into the dirt with you?
He peered down at the prone figure, then began a slow, deliberate circle around him, maintaining a safe distance.
Relax. We aren't some kind of savages. I'm actually a very compassionate soul. Honestly, I can't stand the sight of blood. It makes my head swim. I'm quite averse to violence. So if you just play nice and share what you know, you might find a way to keep your heart beating. However...
The warmth drained from his voice instantly, replaced by a low, freezing edge.
If you choose to be difficult, don't assume we won't find more creative ways to loosen your tongue.
He let out a soft, dry chuckle, his gaze drifting toward the twisted, thorn-choked trees that hemmed in the village.
The local legend says that if those thorns catch your skin, the itching is absolutely maddening. I wonder, if we were to wrap a few of those vines around you, how long would you last before you begged for it to stop?
Zhang Cheng's jaw tightened as he performed a theatrical shudder. He stepped to a vantage point just out of reach and began to frantically scratch at his own skin as if plagued by an invisible swarm.
That sensation, hiss, you're desperate to scratch, but you can't reach the spot. It feels like thousands of tiny insects are scurrying over your flesh, their mandibles sinking in over and over. Naturally, I'll pick the most sensitive spots. The soles of your feet, inside your ears, your armpits. Maybe even your tongue? Or right into the gums?
He went still, a cruel light dancing in his eyes as he cast a meaningful look toward the man's inner thigh.
That area looks like it would be particularly effective.
Lin Yi froze, casting a wary, wide-eyed look at Zhang Cheng before quietly backing away toward Lin Yi.
And he's the one who says he isn't cruel?
Lin Yi simply shook his head. He knew this was a calculated performance. Zhang Cheng was methodically dismantling the man's resolve with terror. It was the ultimate gamble, a flickering wick of hope placed against an abyss of absolute bone-crushing despair. Lin Yi watched closely, knowing that hollow threats wouldn't be enough to break a man like Brother Lei. The memory of that roofless house in the North Village, the one filled with bones, was proof enough that this man had already seen the worst this world had to offer. Before Zhang Cheng could even finish his threat, the man burst into a fit of mocking laughter, a sound devoid of anything but pure disdain.
Don't waste your breath with those fairy tales.
Brother Lei spat, his gaze locked onto Zhang Cheng.
If you truly want to see me suffer, it's simple. Grab a blade, slice open my skin, and string me up from those gnarled branches. The stench of my blood will call to the rats and those winged monstrosities. The birds will descend first, tearing my flesh away piece by agonizing piece. Then the rats will find the openings. They'll burrow inside me, gnawing on my organs from the inside out while I'm still breathing. I won't die quickly. I'll get to experience every second of my own body being stripped down to the marrow. If I'm lucky, I'll still be conscious when I'm nothing but a skeleton, watching those beasts finish their meal.
The others recoiled, their faces contorting in involuntary horror. Only Lin Yi and Chu Kai, who had witnessed the true nightmare of the bone-filled room, remained unmoved. Compared to the visceral hell Brother Lei was describing, Zhang Cheng's earlier threats felt like nothing more than a child's game. For a fleeting moment, Zhang Cheng seemed caught off guard. He quickly regained his composure, smoothing his features back into a mask of feigned empathy.
Good heavens, that sounds far too barbaric even for me. Didn't I mention it? We're very compassionate people, especially me. The sight of a single drop of blood makes me feel quite faint. I really couldn't bring myself to do something so unsavory.
Zhang Cheng paused, his voice slowing to a crawl as he leaned in for maximum impact.
What if, instead of all that, we simply sent you back? We could return you to the city of Oracle, back to that motherland you seem to miss so dearly. Doesn't that sound lovely? Honestly, I really am far too kind for my own good.
The sound of Brother Lei's mocking laughter died in his throat, replaced by a sudden, chilling silence. Lin Yi felt a sharp jolt of admiration for Zhang Cheng's uncanny intuition. He had found the one crack in the man's armor. It was clear now. Brother Lei didn't fear his captors, and he certainly wasn't afraid of a gruesome end. But he harbored a secret, private terror, a nightmare that outweighed even the most agonizing death. That terror was the place he had once called home, the city of Oracle. To him, returning to that city was a fate far worse than simply ceasing to exist.
If you have any shred of courage, then just end it! Kill me now!
Zhang Cheng gave a casual, nonchalant shrug, his expression one of feigned helplessness.
Courage? I'm afraid I'm fresh out. Look at me. I'm just a high school grad. Where would I even find the guts for something like that? Besides, I'm far too soft-hearted. The mere thought of taking a life makes me tremble with fear.
Kill me! Please, just kill me!
Driven to madness by his own terror, the man began to violently slam his head against the frozen earth. And Cheng Dao stepped in instantly, his brow furrowed as he pinned the man's head down with the heavy sole of his boot. With the man effectively immobilized, Zhang Cheng stood directly over him, his gaze like a scalpel.
Now, are you finally ready to be honest with us? Tell us everything you know.
I don't know. I swear, I don't know anything.
The man's entire frame was convulsing now, his voice thick with a raw, unadulterated terror that no one could fake.
You're still trying to play us? Fine, we'll send you back right this second.
Zhang Cheng stared deep into the man's eyes for a long, agonizing silence. Finally, he let out a slow breath and shook his head.
Let it go. Looking at him now, he really doesn't have the answers we're looking for.
Bullshit! He has to be lying.
He has no reason left to lie.
Lin Yi said, his voice quiet but firm as he stepped forward.
When someone is pushed to the edge of their greatest fear and finds no escape, the truth is all that's left. Besides, his life isn't so different from our own. In many ways, it's likely much worse. In a hierarchy where humans are treated as livestock, a man at the very bottom would never be given access to important secrets.
As the words left his mouth, a new realization dawned on Lin Yi. He looked down at the shivering man with a piercing new focus.
Tell me, how exactly did someone like you manage to escape from a city like that?
The city of Oracle was not just another ruined metropolis. It was a cold, efficient machine designed for one purpose: the industrial-scale breeding of human cattle. Inside those walls, surveillance was absolute. How did a man like Brother Lei, someone with zero supernatural gifts, manage to slip through the cracks of such a fortress? The numbers did not add up.
I don't know.
He whispered, his voice as hollow and empty as a freshly dug grave.
Bullshit!
Lu Linhai roared, his patience finally snapping like a brittle branch in a storm. He stepped forward, tightening his grip on the rusted iron bar. He towered over the broken man cowering on the dirt floor.
Even a brainless freak wouldn't buy that story. You expect us to believe you just walked out? What? Did some guardian angel carry you over the perimeter walls?
Actually, it's not as far-fetched as you think.
Zhang Cheng interjected, his eyes never leaving the tilted laptop screen.
According to these encrypted logs, a massive riot tore through the city of Oracle several years ago. It was total chaos. This coward didn't escape. He just rode the wave of the massacre right out the front gates.
A riot?
Chu Kai's brow furrowed, his gaze sharpening with tactical focus.
What kind of riot are we talking about? Did the monsters finally turn on each other? Or did the livestock finally find the strength to bite back?
I'm talking to you. Answer me.
Lu Linhai snarled, jabbing the jagged rebar into the man's ribs to punctuate his demand.
I truly don't know.
Brother Lei's voice was a faint, pathetic rasp, disappearing into the dark corners of the shack.
That night, it's all a blur of noise. A deafening, horrific wall of sound from the outside. It sounded like a war zone. Then, someone tore through the holding cells. They ripped the machinery right off our bodies. They were screaming at us to run. Just run! Everyone scrambled for the exit. I didn't care why or how it was happening. I just wanted out of that cage. Whatever happened next, I truly don't know. Just kill me already. I'm done.
Machinery!
Lu Linhai muttered, the word hanging heavy in the stagnant air of the shack.
They were likely restraints, mechanical anchors to keep them docile while they were being worked.
Lin Yi murmured, his voice trailing off as the grim implications sank in. But the thought of the riot lingered in Lin Yi's mind. He began piecing together a darker, more complex theory. If the true humans were the absolute masters of this world, then where there was an iron heel, there would eventually be a spark of rebellion. The riot in the city of Oracle might have been an organized strike, a desperate attempt to break the cycle of industrial breeding. But judging by the world as it stood today, that rebellion had been crushed into the dirt.
Don't let his pathetic scribbling about revenge fool you.
Zhang Cheng interjected, his voice cold and clinical.
This guy is nothing more than a bottom feeder. He claims he was building an army for vengeance, but that's a blatant lie.
Zhang Cheng stated, his eyes narrowing with pure loathing at the man on the ground.
He just wanted to play God in this little corner of hell.
The plan for revenge was nothing more than a psychological shield, a way to justify the slaughter of innocents so he could sleep at night.
He actually wrote that his atrocities were for the future of humanity, that a few lambs had to be sacrificed for the sake of the flock. Absolute garbage. He cut a deal with the freaks. They acted as his enforcers and bodyguards, and in exchange, he served them a steady supply of fresh, living hosts.
Lin Yi's thoughts immediately jumped to Dean Van Looy. The poor bastard must have felt like the luckiest man alive when Brother Lei rescued him from the monsters. He never realized he was simply being moved from one slaughterhouse to another.
How did he even link up with these specific parasites in the village?
Chukai asked, his voice tight with suspicion.
After he fled the city of Oracle, he ended up in a ghost town.
Zhang Cheng said, pulling several brittle yellowed pages from the diary.
That's where he stumbled upon the hair snail parasites.
A ghost town? The contents of these files should clear things up. He scavenged these from the ruins of that city.
Lin Yi took the papers. The texture was disturbingly familiar, the same heavy, sterile stock and Cheng Dao had recovered earlier. He smoothed the pages, revealing a detailed anatomical sketch of a hair snail parasite alongside clinical data. The header read, Subject, hair snail parasite.
Classification, Phylum Platyhelminthes, Order Prolachythophora, medium intelligence, social hive behavior, high parasitic index. Adult specimens measure 10 to 30 centimeters at rest, expanding up to a meter as they engorge on nutrients. The body is highly elastic and resilient. Most are a sickly yellowish brown or dull gray. The mother worm is a stark bone white. The surface is covered in fine black filaments. These are not hair but sensitive neural receptors. The parasite is highly adaptable. It matures by draining the host's vital nutrients. If a host becomes depleted, the parasite extends its eye stalks to scan for a replacement, waiting for the opportune moment to migrate. A colony contains only one mother worm, the sole reproductive engine for the hive. If she is terminated, a secondary member will undergo a rapid, spontaneous sex change to replace her.
The data was far more comprehensive than anything they had seen on the mantis wolves. But it wasn't the biology of the worms that made Lin Yi's blood run cold. It was the header on the next page, Human Farm 28.
Experimental findings, this species is fully compatible with human hosts. During initial infection, the parasite floods the host's nervous system with dopamine. The resulting euphoria bypasses the survival instinct, allowing the parasite to seize total control of the brain. The human becomes a mindless puppet. Successful infection grants the parasite access to the host's residual memories. This section was heavily underlined. In high-stress situations, the parasite can trigger a massive adrenaline surge. This forced chemical spike grants unnatural strength but rapidly burns through physical reserves. Note, this process invariably leads to early organ failure and death. This section was also underlined. Due to human oral anatomy, the parasite cannot exit through the mouth quickly enough. To compensate, it slowly dissolves the host's spinal muscles and skin from the inside out, carving a dedicated exit point. As the host's body is hollowed out, the creature begins to bulge through the rupture in the back. This physical deformity is impossible to hide, a critical flaw for standard integration. Conclusion: the species is unsuitable for large-scale agricultural use. Human Farm 28 is classified as a failure. Total sterilization is recommended. Note: hair snail parasites possess extreme regenerative capabilities. Standard physical trauma is insufficient for termination.
Recommendation: deploy the Quail Hunter unit to Farm 28 for immediate liquidation.
Human Farm 28?
Lin Yi's stomach churned as he stared at the number, the cold reality of the classification sinking in.
Quail Hunter Unit?
Lu Linhai scans the digital logs, a ripple of uncertainty passing over his features as he contemplates the strange designation.
Quail Hunter, it refers to the 21st of the 12 zodiac signs. It's meant to represent the 12 distinct facets of human nature.
Zhang Cheng provides the explanation with a casual shrug, having overheard Lu Linhai's quiet ruminations.
The Quail Hunter unit mentioned here, they're essentially the attack dogs bred by the slave masters. They're a specialized strike team used for eliminating freaks and
for putting down livestock rebellions.
Lin Yi finishes the thought for him, his voice heavy with the realization of their enemy's cruelty. The combined population of freaks and livestock must be immense, vastly outnumbering the Masters. If they ever truly rose up, the Masters would be annihilated in a heartbeat. To prevent such a collapse, the Masters implemented absolute control, erasing truth, fabricating a false history, and brainwashing everyone into a state of mindless submission within a simulated reality. But there are always those who see through the deception, those who seek the light and choose to fight, and that's precisely when the Master's hounds are unleashed.
A unit capable of purging the freaks of an entire city. Could these soldiers all be God-chosen with actual abilities?
Chukai leans in, his expression tight as he considers the tactical implications of such a superhuman force.
If that's what we're up against, aren't we in an incredible amount of danger?
Lu Linhai adds his concern to the group, his eyes wide as he looks around at his companions.
you're overthinking things.
Zhang Cheng gives a nonchalant shrug, finding Lu Linhai's mounting fear almost humorous in its futility.
First of all, about this danger you're so worried about, when have we ever actually been safe? Even if we hadn't discovered any of this, the end result would still be us getting devoured by some freak or another, wouldn't it?
Zhang Cheng appears to be the most composed member of the group, his posture almost loose, his eyes reflecting a subtle, unnerving spark of anticipation. His demeanor stands in sharp contrast to Chu Kai, who had also grasped the reality of the freaks early on. But where Zhang Cheng seeks answers, Chu Kai only yearns for a life of quiet stability. The truth of the world holds no allure for him. His only ambition is to find a sanctuary where he and his sister can exist without fear. Zhang Cheng, however, is driven by a profound and relentless curiosity, a hunger to unravel the unknown that outweighs any desire for comfort. He tilts his head back, staring up at the vast, uncaring night sky before speaking in a low, contemplative whisper.
It's possible that from the very second we took our first breaths, our entire lives were already written by those arrogant masters. But
His voice fades, a ghost of a smile touching his lips as he leaves the thought unfinished.
But why should we let anyone else decide what our lives are worth?
Lin Yi erupts with a sudden, fierce energy, his words mirroring Zhang Cheng's unspoken sentiment with a burning defiance. He refuses to be a mere character in someone else's script, a pawn in a game he never agreed to play. But as the declaration leaves his lips, a sudden, agonizing shock of pain lances through his entire frame, stealing his breath. The exhaustion of their escape and the relentless encounters with freaks have finally begun to take their toll on his body. Though he tries to mask it, the involuntary flinch does not escape Zhang Cheng's keen, observant gaze.
Brother Zhang Cheng, I have a question.
Chu Yun whispers, her eyes darting back toward the distant crackling pyre that was once a village.
How exactly did you manage to draw those rats and monstrous birds out of the forest?
And Cheng Dao and Chu Kai both turn their attention toward the genius student, their expressions mirroring Chu Yun's underlying suspicion.
the scent of blood?
Zhang Cheng delivers the answer with clinical simplicity, as if explaining a basic chemical reaction.
But where did you get it? You're not a god-chosen Zhang Cheng. You couldn't have possibly taken down those freaks alone.
Chu Kai recalls the sheer, overwhelming power required to defeat even a single possessed host. To him, the idea of Zhang Cheng hunting freaks is an impossibility.
You're right, I'm no match for the freaks. Not by a long shot.
A faint, unsettling smile touches Zhang Cheng's lips as he leans forward.
Which is why I simply chose targets that weren't freaks.
Not freaks?
Chu Yun glances down at Brother Lei, who lies bound and defeated on the scorched earth.
But he's the only human left who isn't.
He means the children, Chu Yun.
Lin Yi completes the sentence, his eyes locking onto Zhang Cheng's with a cold, shared understanding.
The children.
Chu Kai freezes, his entire body tensing as the horrific realization sinks into his mind.
You killed those kids? You used their blood to lure the monsters?
Before you moralize, let me clarify the situation. While those children weren't fully transformed, their bodies were already crawling with parasite eggs. Some had already hatched into hair snail parasite larvae, consuming them from the inside out.
Even without Zhang Cheng's intervention, they were already dead. They just hadn't stopped breathing yet.
Lin Yi lets out a long, weary sigh, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. The records were explicit. Hair snail parasites always seek out the weakest possible hosts to lay their eggs. It's a calculated survival strategy. These vulnerable hosts serve as a training ground for the larvae, allowing them to master their control over surface cilia while feasting on a steady supply of nutrients. Since larvae require far less than adults, young children become the perfect, tragic targets for their development.
So that's why they looked so deformed? Because of the parasites growing inside them?
Chu Kai connects the biological dots, his voice devoid of its usual sharpness as he contemplates the suffering of the village youth.
It's more complex than that.
Zhang Cheng shakes his head, his tone shifting into that of a cold, analytical lecturer.
Before the larvae even master their cilia, they interfere with the child's nervous system, triggering devastating hormonal imbalances. The pituitary gland is often the first to fail, halting the growth of bones and organs. That's why they remain trapped in those stunted, fragile bodies.
The environment only exacerbated their condition. A child's skin is delicate, and in a village crawling with freaks and filth, infections and lesions were inevitable. It was never a place meant for human life to thrive.
And it wasn't just their bodies. Their minds were already warped.
Lin Yi interjects with a heavy sigh, recalling the unsettling behavior of the children he had seen.
Under the freak's influence, their sense of empathy was erased. They didn't see horror when someone was devoured. They saw entertainment. They were already gone.
You did what had to be done.
And Cheng Dao clenches his weathered fists, his knuckles turning white. His anger isn't directed at Zhang Cheng, but at the monstrous architects of this misery, the freaks, and the true humans who allow it to persist. Lin Yi gives a slow, somber nod of agreement. He knows all too well the fate that awaited those children. He still remembers the agonizing screams of Dean Van Looy when the parasite finally abandoned his body. In this world, being a host is a death sentence. When a freak leaves, the person doesn't simply die. They linger in a hollow void, their senses shattered by the sudden loss of dopamine, slowly rotting in a state of pure despair. Against such a fate, Zhang Cheng's clinical intervention wasn't an act of murder. It was the only mercy left in a world devoid of it.
But there is still one thing I don't understand.
Chu Kai narrows his eyes, his focus shifting back to the enigmatic student.
Lin Yi only learned about the eggs from the records we just found. How did you know? And more importantly, where did you get those laptops?
Let me handle the explanation. I'm the one who should say it.
The moment Chu Kai finished his inquiry, Lu Linhai sprang to his feet, unable to contain himself. He stole a quick look at Zhang Cheng. Seeing the other boy didn't seem to mind, he launched into his story with visible enthusiasm.
Listen up. This thin bamboo stick over here, he's as slippery and crafty as a desert fox.
I prefer you use words like intelligent or strategic, if you don't mind.
Zhang Cheng cut in smoothly, though he made no move to actually stop the other boy's rambling.
Think back to when we first parted ways. Our goal was to scavenge for information, right? The plan was to track down leads on those freaks or the God Chosen.
Lu Linhai gestured broadly as he spoke, emphasizing the weight of their original mission.
We were also supposed to keep our eyes peeled for anything that felt off about this place. But then there's this guy. He goes off on some personal side quest. All he cared about was finding out exactly where this man lived.
Lu Linhai jabbed a finger toward the man lying defeated on the ground, the one they called Brother Lei.
You should have seen him. He was acting all impressed, calling this guy a legend and a pillar of strength. Said he just had to meet such an inspiring figure in person.
What do you know about it?
Zhang Cheng rolled his eyes, clearly tired of the exaggeration.
It's called playing the weakling to trap the predator. You have to lower their guard if you want to get close. You've been talking for 5 minutes and still haven't said anything useful. Move aside. I'll explain it properly.
Zhang Cheng stepped forward, physically nudging Lu Linhai out of the way to take center stage.
The truth is, my instincts were screaming from the moment we arrived. This village, it isn't right.
Unlike his friend, Zhang Cheng wasted no time on fluff. His gaze was sharp, focused on the underlying horror.
During our initial welcome, the villagers mentioned something crucial. The rats and the birds in the surrounding woods, they have an unnatural sensitivity to the smell of blood. If that's the case, then how do the women here manage their monthly cycles without attracting a swarm of monsters? They ambush passing buses. They fight freaks. Injuries are inevitable. So how exactly are they dealing with the blood that inevitably follows?
Lin Yi stiffened, the implication of Zhang Cheng's words hitting him like a physical blow. He and Chu Kai had already guessed at the darker side of the village during their scouting, but this specific detail? It was a gap in his logic he hadn't even begun to bridge.
And then there are the children. The locals claim they were born here, a new generation raised in the wake of their rescue.
The memory of Dean Van Looy's voice echoed in Lin Yi's mind, repeating that exact same hollow assurance.
This place is a wasteland compared to the city. There's zero medical infrastructure, and nutrition for expecting mothers is virtually non-existent. In a world where even a single drop of blood draws every predator for miles, how could a woman survive the trauma of childbirth? The rats and birds would be at the door before the first cry. But the biggest red flag, the one that felt the most fundamentally wrong, that would be their precious saintess.
Zhang Cheng's casual tone vanished, replaced by a chilling weight of total seriousness. He paused, letting the silence stretch before delivering his next observation with absolute gravity.
Seriously? What kind of sick family would have a saintess that looks like a withered husk?
Lin Yi could only stare, a glare slowly forming on his face. He wasn't sure if he should be offended or impressed by the sheer bluntness. He thought back to the girl they had seen. Before the parasite claimed her, she might have been full of life, a beacon of hope for her people. But the infestation had drained her. To feed the mother worm's bottomless hunger, she had been reduced to a living sacrifice, wasting away in that dark hall. Xiao Hu's mother had met the same fate, selected by the villagers, dragged to the ancestral hall to serve as the next vessel, only to perish under the parasite's weight. As for the women's biological cycles, the reality was likely even bleaker. Malnutrition and the hormonal wreckage caused by the parasites probably shut their bodies down entirely.
Can you try being serious for just 1 minute? If you're going to joke around, let me finish the briefing.
I am being serious.
Zhang Cheng gave a careless shrug before shifting back into his analytical mode.
There are only 2 logical reasons for a community like this to maintain a saintess. First, she's a true god-chosen, someone with the power to actually fight back and lead humanity to a real victory. But if her only miracle is sniffing out freaks, then Chu Kai could put on a dress and do the exact same job.
Chu Kai's brow furrowed in a deep frown. Had he not been temporarily blinded, his gaze would have likely burned a hole through Zhang Cheng.
The second reason is that the saintess serves as a symbol. Imagine it. A group of survivors living in constant terror, surrounded by monsters. They're desperate for any kind of comfort, any shred of hope to keep them from breaking. In a hellscape like this, what brings peace? A saintess who is radiant and warm, someone whose smile promises a future worth fighting for. She should be the living embodiment of their faith. She should be a source of strength, someone you think of when the world starts to go dark, a figure of vitality and grace. The creature we saw back there? She isn't that. Not even close.
Zhang Cheng looked genuinely insulted by the aesthetic failure of the village's faith. But the irritation vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a wide, mischievous grin.
And that was exactly why I knew something was rotten. Seriously, where did you guys think I was going with that? But let's stay focused. We have bigger problems to discuss. The moment I realized this entire settlement was a facade, I knew talking to the common villagers would be a waste of breath. They're either too terrified or too far gone to give us anything useful. The ancestral hall is locked down tight, impossible to infiltrate without making a scene. That left me with one real option, our breeding stock friend here.
Zhang Cheng shot a brief, icy glance at Brother Lei, who was still pinned to the ground. The man let out a sharp hiss of air, his jaw clenching in a silent snarl.
Interrogating him would have been a slog. He's the type to take his secrets to the grave just to spite us. But his home, a man's environment, tells you everything you need to know.
So that whole wandering off into the woods performance, that was the distraction.
Lin Yi's suspicions were finally confirmed. He had known Zhang Cheng wasn't the type to get lost, especially not with a forest full of mutants. Those footprints at the edge of the northern forest had been breadcrumbs. A trail designed specifically to lure Brother Lei out and leave his sanctuary unguarded.
Leia's quarters are unique. Most of these people are just hosts. The parasites only care about the nutrients, not the decor. They're content to rot in whatever hovel they're given. They don't need comfort. They just need to survive long enough to propagate. But our leader here is different. He's human after all.
Zhang Cheng gestured toward the captive man with a mocking tilt of his head.
Years of being treated like a prize pig has left him with a taste for luxury. The moment he broke free, he started surrounding himself with the trappings of a life he never had. His place is overflowing with loot. Laptops, clothes, trinkets, all scavenged from the very buses he claims to be saving people from.
Zhang Cheng shook his head, looking down at Lei with a mixture of pity and contempt.
It's the human condition, isn't it? Give a man a little taste of power and a few shiny toys, and he'll sell out his own species just to keep them. He blathers on about vengeance and justice, but look at him. He isn't a revolutionary. He's just a petty king of a garbage heap. He has no vision, no real ambition beyond his own comfort. A truly pathetic display.
How did you know? How did you sense the danger and manage to lure those creatures to us at just the right moment?
Chu Kai's mind raced back to the moment they were surrounded. He had recognized Lu Linhai's voice in the chaos, but Zhang Cheng had been a phantom unseen and unheard until the rats arrived. It was clear now. Lu Linhai had been nothing more than a herald, a piece moved across the board by Zhang Cheng's hand.
It wasn't magic. It was simple observation.
Zhang Cheng spoke as if he were discussing the weather, his tone entirely devoid of the tension that had gripped the others.
The entire village mobilized in an instant. When a community that normally hides behind walls suddenly starts acting like a coordinated hive, you don't need a PhD to know something's wrong. There are only two scenarios that trigger that kind of mass movement. Either an external threat forced the parasites to defend their territory, or they were preparing to close the net around you three. In either case, it meant your lives were on the line.
Zhang Cheng had already leafed through the breeding diary he found in Lei's quarters. The scribbled notes had given him a crash course in the biology of the hair snail parasites. He knew that once the host was no longer viable or the colony was threatened, those things would be looking for fresh blood, new hosts to infest. He also hadn't forgotten the Saintess's hunger. Her eyes had lingered on Chu Yun with a predatory interest that suggested she wouldn't stay patient for long. But there was a deeper layer to his strategy, one that involved the boy standing beside him.
I didn't send the gorilla to save you. I knew he'd be useless in a real fight. I sent him to keep Lin Yi from doing something reckless. I needed to make sure he didn't decide to reset before I could get what I came for. Speaking of which, While I was looting our friend's house, I stumbled upon something far more valuable than a few old laptops.
Zhang Cheng reached into his backpack, his fingers closing around an object hidden deep within. With a flourish, he pulled it into the firelight.
Take a look at this. I have a feeling it's exactly what we've been looking for.